So hello, everyone. Welcome this afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Nina Delas Alas, Senior Associate at Eminent Associates, Inc., or M&A. And M&A serves as the Research and Evaluation Technical Assistance Support Provider for the SSTEM Resource and Evaluation Center, which we'd like to abbreviate as SSTEM REC. We are happy to host this virtual event today, which features the work of Dr. Yao Yang on understanding and measuring the effects of imposter syndrome using the Clance Imposter Syndrome Scale. Next slide, please. To get us started, we'd like to know who is in the audience and see what you are curious about regarding today's topic. In the chat, we invite you to introduce yourself by sharing your name, institution, and project track. So that would be track 1, track 2, or track 3. If you have an STEM award, and perhaps 1 or 2 questions you have about the effects of imposter syndrome and its assessment. I'm going to go ahead and move forward, but please continue to introduce yourself and post your questions in the chat. Thank you for doing this, as your questions will help us guide the discussion today. Next slide. So let me go over some of the few housekeeping items that we have to help us better facilitate today's session. Throughout the webinar, we encourage you to write questions or comments in the chat. When we get to the Q&A portion and you wish to speak, please just ask a question by using your raise your hand button, and then we will call on you. And if you're comfortable doing so, please feel free to turn on your camera. To help us to get to know one another and learn about your interests on this topic, please go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. And if you haven't already, please post your questions. If you'll notice, we have 2 American Sign Language interpreters, and we're very happy to have them join us today. In addition, we are pleased to have a live transcriptioner providing closed captioning. Our thanks to these individuals for helping us make the information presented in this webinar more widely available. The slides being presented today can be found on the AAAS STEM REC website. If you'd like to follow along with the slides on your computer, you can download them now, and the links are going to be made available there in the chat, along with the event webpage link. Also on the event webpage, there is going to be a recording of today's webinar, and it will be posted as soon as it is available. So we hope that this event really runs smoothly, but if you have any technical difficulties or questions, please feel free to contact my AAAS colleague, Jamila Blake, wonderful Jamila, in this chat, or send her an email at jblake@AAAS.org. Finally, we would really appreciate your feedback on today's session. It's really important because your feedback really does help us inform what the content is for our webinar series. So towards the end of the webinar, we will provide you a link to a very short participant survey. Please take a moment to complete it. It's going to be a pop-up window. And then when you exit out of Zoom, there will be also another opportunity to complete it. And so we thank you in advance for taking a minute to complete that survey. Next slide, please. One final logistical piece. It's important for me to share a few disclaimers with you before we dive in. This material is based upon work supported by the National Science Foundation under the grant number 222-4093. Any opinions, findings, interpretations, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this material are those of its authors and do not represent the views of the AAAS Board of Directors, the Council of AAAS, AAAS membership, or the National Science Foundation. Additionally, the AAAS STEM REC is promoting consultation with Eminent Associates, Inc., as they are a REC partner, but this does not constitute an endorsement of M&A as evaluators by the National Science Foundation. So let's do a quick snapshot of the AAAS STEM REC. In October 2022, through a competitive proposal process, AAAS received NSF funding to manage the STEM Resource and Evaluation Center, or REC for short. The REC's work focuses on promoting effective strategies and practices to increase the number of talented, low-income students who obtain degrees and careers in STEM. The activities of the REC work across multiple levels to increase the capacity of the entire STEM portfolio, the campus STEM programs, as well as the professional development of STEM scholars. We welcome you to visit the REC website to learn more and to join our mailing list. For more information, you can see that popping up in your chat, which is the stemrec.AAAS.org and about. We also ask you to please join our listserv so you can learn more about us through our monthly newsletter. Next slide, please. While the REC is managed by AAAS in a coordination with NSF, the full team is composed of several partner organizations. This slide shows all of them. My organization, M&A, provides, again, the research and evaluation technical assistance support to current and prospective STEM awardees, and we're happy to be facilitating this webinar today. Next slide. So just to quickly go over, this is the general objective of actually this series of EBPs, or evidence-based practices. This is the fourth that we're having on this series. Next slide. And this is today's agenda. Want to just give you a little bit of a spoiler alert. Dr. Yang has also a little bit of some interactive activities. So we hope to get to those and be able to have a really robust conversation with you. Next slide, please. So we have, as I mentioned, this is about evidence-based practices. We have a plethora of resources available. We're now up to 18 repositories, and we welcome you to go through them. So besides just the imposter syndrome, we have many other practices noted in this. So feel free to go to the research section of our website. We also have there the guidebook for preparing for research and evaluation for STEM programs and projects. So please take a look at that as well. And the links are available coming up in the chat. So next slide, please. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Yao Yang. She is the an assessment specialist for student success at Purdue University's Institutional Data Analytics and Assessment, which is under the office of the provost. Her work spans campus-wide evaluations of programs supporting first-generation low-income students, students with disabilities, and academic policy reform. She applies both quantitative and qualitative methods in her work, including longitudinal data modeling, multivariate regression, survey validation, and thematic analysis to uncover trends, inform equity-centered policies, and support continuous improvement. As a scholar, she examines the psychological and structural factors that shape student outcomes in STEM education, including belonging and persistence, particularly for underrepresented and minoritized populations. It's an honor and pleasure to have Dr. Yang with us. Please take us away.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Lina. Are you able to see my slides? Okay. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining today. My name is Yao Yang, and I'm really excited to be here with you today. I have prepared carefully to make everything as clear as possible. If anything feels unclear during the presentation, please don't hesitate to ask questions. I truly welcome them. So I come to this presentation as both a researcher and a practitioner. I have worked closely with students and institutional data at places like Yale University and Purdue University. So this webinar is part of a larger effort within the STEM community to understand and support the real day-to-day experience of students in STEM, especially those facing complex emotions like the self-doubt, internal pressure, or imposter feelings. So I'm truly honored to share some research findings and also some practical strategies you might take back to your own work. Let's get started. Before we jump into the content, I want to share our goals for today's session because I really want to use these opportunities to co-create knowledge with our wonderful audience in, in this field to have a better understanding of what imposter syndrome is and how to support students. So first, we will look at what's the Clance Imposter Phenomenon Scale and how it's structured. And then I will walk you through a recent study I conducted with my colleagues at Purdue. We explored how imposter feelings mediate the relationship between achievement goal orientations and psychological distress. And then I will share two examples about how institutions can support to reduce imposter phenomenon, even though implicitly. And then finally, we will take some time to reflect together. As we move through this presentation, I invite you to think about this question. How might you apply what we discussed today in your own role, whether you are a researcher, a program evaluator, or a faculty mentor? Let's keep that in mind as we begin. Let's begin with a shared understanding of what imposter syndrome really is, especially in the context of higher education. This term was first coined in the 1970s by psychologists Clance and Imposter based on their work with high-achieving women. But now we know it shows up across identities and in many different settings. In college and university life, imposter feelings often emerge when students doubt their abilities, feel like a fraud, or attribute their success to luck, not to their own effort or talent. You might have heard students say things like, I don't belong here. They made a mistake admitting me. I just got lucky to be there. So these thoughts are not just occasional self-doubt. They reflect a pattern that can really affect students' confidence, persistence, and well-being. And especially in STEM, where students are often navigating rigorous environment, social comparison, and underrepresentation. So these feelings can be amplified. So when we talk about imposter syndrome today, we are not just naming a personal challenge, we are acknowledging a complex experience that's shaped by the academic culture, identity, and structural pressures. So imposter syndrome is not a personal flaw. It shows up most often in people who are doing something new, something important, and something hard, and who really cares deeply about doing it very well. So that's not weakness, that's a sign of courage, growth, and high standards. And as many of you know, these feelings don't just affect mindset, they also affect students' engagement, retention, and well-being. So that's why understanding them, especially through some validated tools like the CIPS, is so important for researchers, evaluators, and campus practitioners alike. Let's turn to the Clance Imposter Phenomenon Scale. So it's a 20-item self-doubt 20-item self-report tool developed in the 1980s by polling clients to measure how often someone experienced imposter thought. Each item is rated on a 5-point scale from not at all true to very true. The total score indicates the intensity of imposter feelings. It includes three key dimensions. The first one is fake. That is the fear of being exposed as a fraud despite clear competence. The second is discount. That is rejecting praise or achievements as undeserved. The third is luck. That refers students who believe their success is due to some external factors, not their internal abilities. Let's take a quick look at the evolution of the CIPS. It was created in the mid-1980s based on the clinical work with high-achieving women we mentioned before, and the structure has remained consistent, but its reliability and the three-factor model have been validated in diverse populations. So in the 2000s and 2010s, it was adapted globally, used in places like Germany, Iran, and Korea, and many more countries. Still, there are some critiques have emerged. For example, it doesn't directly measure the systemic issues like the racism or sexism in higher education, even though those can intensify imposter feelings. So today, we should use this scale very thoughtfully, recognizing both its strengths and also its limitations. And now I would like to invite you to pause and reflect on this question. What are some common imposter thoughts among college students in STEM, especially those who are female, first generation, or racially minoritized? Please take a moment to think about what you have seen or experienced and feel free to post your thoughts in the chat. There is no right or wrong answer. We just want to surface what's on your mind. So as you're reflecting, you can take a look at this image. It captures the mental swing many students are experiencing. They're bouncing between I'm amazing and I'm a fraud. We're going to revisit your responses at the end of the session as part of our wrap up and reflection. So if you are comfortable and feel ready, you can post in the chat. If you feel like you need more time to think about it, you can definitely do that. So given the time, I will move on the slides, move on presentation because in the end, we're going to revisit your responses. So I think you have plenty of time to think about it. And now I would like to share a study I conducted with my four wonderful colleagues at Purdue who are Chunyu Xu, Tuche Kratos, and Tabrasha Glass, and Yukiko Maeda. We published this article earlier in 2024. So this study explores three key questions. What are the relationships among achievement goal orientations, imposter syndrome, and psychological distress in female STEM students? Does being racially minoritized change how these variables relate? Does being first generation also moderate these relationships? We use the structural equation modeling and multi-group structural equation modeling to explore these questions. So these questions help us understand both the patterns and for whom they are most impactful. This is our hypothesis model. We hypothesize that different achievement goal orientations influence imposter syndrome, which in turn affects psychological distress that includes somatization, depression, and anxiety. So we expect imposter syndrome to act as a key pathway linking goals to distress. We surveyed 395 female STEM students at Purdue in 2021. Most were undergraduates. 44% of them were first generation, and the sample was racially diverse. We used three validated measures: the Achievement Goal Questionnaire, the revised version, particularly for the college settings, and of course, the Clance Imposter Syndrome Scale, and the Brief Symptom Inventory 18 version, the brief version. So we'll look at the findings in more detail on the next few slides, not only for research, but also for designing student support programs that target different patterns of imposter thinking. So here is the key findings of our structural equation model. We found that imposter syndrome significantly mediates the relationship between students' achievement goal orientations and their psychological distress. And students who adopted avoidance goals like the performance avoidance goals, mastery avoidance goals, like the students who are trying not to fail or look incompetent in the class, Those group of students reported significantly higher imposter scores, and that in turn was linked to more psychological distress. On the other hand, students with mastery approach goals, the students who focus on learning and improvement, they were less likely to report imposter feelings and distress. So this matters because it helps us understand that the type of motivation students adopt can shape how they interpret success and whether they internalize it or doubt it. So in program design or mentoring, it's important to encourage our students to form mastery-focused goals because that can help students buffer against some imposter experience and emotional strain. We also tested whether the mediation pattern differed by minoritized status. Surprisingly, we found no significant moderation effect. That means that the pathway from achievement goals to imposter syndrome to distress was similar across the racial and ethnic groups in our sample. So that doesn't mean minoritized students don't face unique challenges. They absolutely do. But in this study, the relationship appeared consistent. It also reminds us to look deeper, not just at the identities, but also at the contextual and structural factors that may shape students' internal experience. We also looked at the first generation status to see if the mediation effect changed. In this case, we did find a significant moderation effect. The indirect pathway was stronger for first generation students. This tells us that first generation students may be especially vulnerable to imposter feelings, perhaps because of the added pressure to succeed or fewer role models in STEM. Now let's quickly talk about what we can actually do with these findings. At the individual level, we propose that we can use the strategy that is called a cognitive reframing. We can help students shift from some avoidance goals to mastery approach goals. For example, if some students are struggling with the thoughts, I hope I don't look dumb in the class, we can train students to think about asking questions helps me learn. In addition, we also think that some counseling approaches, especially those grounded in cognitive behavioral therapy, can help students normalize imposter feelings and reduce self-blame and also build students' self-compassion and confidence. It's also important to help students affirm and build their scholar identity on a daily practice. At the institutional side, we think creating some support groups for particularly for example for women in STEM can give students a psychologically safe space to share some challenges and validate each other's experience and make them feel empowered. In addition, we also propose that the faculty and peer training also matters because this training can raise awareness of the gender bias, stereotype threat, and microaggressions students they may have experiencing. And all this can often lead to imposter feelings. And even some small changes like representation in the course materials or lab posters can help students feel seen. So these are just few ways we can move from insights to practice. Now, I would like to share two examples I have from two institutions I have worked with about how they try to reduce the imposter feelings, even though these projects are the main goal of this project are not targeting the imposter syndrome, but I can tell it still implicitly reduce students' imposter syndrome. The first, let me briefly introduce the first year scholars at Yale program. So or we call it FSY. So this is a 6-week invitation-only summer bridge program designed to support incoming first-generation students who are from low-income families as they transition into life at Yale. So students take a writing course and a quantitative reasoning classes, and at the same time, they participate in all kinds of themed workshops hosted by different campus partners, and they engaged in many mentoring sessions with the faculty mentor, staff as mentor, and also alumni mentors. They are also participating in all kinds of wellness activities hosted by the campus counselors. So overall, FSY gives students a head start on both the academic and social demands of college life. I once worked as a program evaluator in 2023 for the FSY program at Yale. I looked at the data from the past 10 years and I found out some challenges, some areas the program can make improvement. So I advocated these asset-based approaches to change some programming. So what's especially noteworthy is that in 2024, FSY adopted a more intentionally asset-based approach. So the program shifted its focus to affirm students' strengths, identities, and goals. Now, I would like to take a step back and highlight how FSY can implicitly help students reduce imposter syndrome, not just through the direct programming, but through the way the entire experience was structured. The first, FSY affirms students' scholar identity. So through some small group interactions like the lunches and advisings with the faculty members, students shared that the faculties were humanized. They became approachable, relatable, and invested in students' growth. At the same time, FSY created a space for authenticity, transparency, and self-expression. It allows students to bring their full selves into the learning environment. So together, all this experience helps students see themselves as scholars, not just a student. That helps to disrupt some internal voice that says, I don't belong here. Because some students shared with me that at the moment when they entered into the campus, they started to feel the imposter feelings. They feel like they do not belong there. They, because of this very beautiful, the architecture style is so different from the environment they have been going to. Second, FSY normalized struggle as a part of learning and growth. So the wellness sessions hosted by the counselors emphasized uh, how to have a good sleep, how to have a good diet, how to set up the boundaries, the social boundaries and also the financial boundaries, and how to have a balanced life. So through all these open conversations about the failure and help seeking, students learned that they are entitled to develop at Yale. There are a lot of resources to support them. So this simple shift made a huge difference from the thinking like they may think that they are falling behind. So this program is coming to help them to remedy them. Actually, that's not. A third, FSY helped students visualize success. We have a lot of alumni panels. We invite alumni from across the country. They come to a campus to do the mentoring. We have a 1 day alumni events. Through this day, students have a lot of opportunities to do the mentoring with alumni from different industries they're interested in. And the alumni also authentically share their experience. And we will also provide a lot of opportunities for students to build social capitals with our alumni. And we also do a lot of goal setting activities, and we provide students many field-based learning opportunities. We take them to the local forum to talk to lawyers because we have many students who are interested in being a lawyer, and we take students to some very famous hospital in New York to do some field-based learning. So all these activities give students a window into what their future could look like, and importantly, how to get there. And this gives students a sense of competence and long-term direction. The fourth, FSY also redefined what academic rigor could look like. So yes, the coursework was challenging, but it came with a very structured support system. We have the office hour, peer tutoring, one-on-one library talk, and we have a lot of writing support, and students are invited to grow. So this shift the idea of rigor from this shifted the idea of academic rigor from gatekeeping to growth opportunities. And finally, FSY builds social space that countered isolation. We have a lot of like social events for students to we also provide some social events for our students to interact with some upper class students who are senior or juniors. So these events help students see that being different is normal and even valuable because we have got so many comments from our students. They share that they are able to be themselves. So this built students a sense of community connection and most importantly a sense of belonging. That's what we are expecting and hoping to see. So even without naming imposter syndrome directly, so FSY program addressed the root cause of imposter syndrome and helped students feel capable, connected, and worthy from the start. And now I'd like to share an example from Purdue. I'm going to share how Purdue is embedding the well-being and personal growth into regular classes through something called the Perspective Project. So this project brings Purdue's steps to leaps pillars into everyday instruction, not as an extra or side program, but as part of the course design. We have four pillars. The center of the pillar is the well-being. So instructors needs to include the well-being pillar and at least other pillar like the leadership, impact, network, or grit through their class discussions, assignments, and reflective activities. So before designing their courses, instructors receive training and guidance from the Perspective Project Committee, who offers support, ideas, and materials. So there is also a student-centered conference where instructors and students come together to share how the project is going and what means to them. So we have piloting this project for 2 years and have made significant progress. And the early results show that how powerful it can be to build personal development into everyday learning. Let me briefly walk you through how each of the pillars support students in reducing imposter syndrome. First, we have the well-being pillar. This pillar teaches self-compassion and stress management strategies and encourage students to ask for help when they need it. And it also creates some spaces for reflection, which helps students recognize their own growth and internalize their accomplishments. In terms of imposter syndrome, this Peter helps reframe failure as a normal and even necessary part of their wellness. It helps to reduce the toxic habit of comparing oneself to others. The next is leadership. Here, students gain confidence through structured opportunities to lead through some group project or some campus initiative. They also learned about the ethical, inclusive leadership, which affirms that there's not just one way to lead. So by working with the peers and making some team-based decisions, students see over and over again that they can lead and succeed. So that's powerful in reducing the fear of being a fraud. The impact pillar connects students' learning to real-world change. Through some experiential learning opportunities, students see that there are many different and valid ways to make a difference. Importantly, it emphasizes collaboration over competition. This helps shift their inner narrative from something like, am I good enough, to how can I contribute meaningfully? And that shift alone can be a huge relief for students who are struggling with imposter thoughts. The fourth pillar is networks. It's all about connection. In the course, students gain access to the mentors all kinds of mentoring organizations on campus and a very strong support system like the counseling center, the career advising center, the alumni events, so which helps them to to expand their social capital. So when students feel like they belong and hear others talk honestly about their struggles, it normalizes their own experience. And this sort of sense of belonging is key to dismantling the imposter syndrome. The last one is grit and persistence. So this pillar teaches that struggle isn't a sign of inadequacy. It's normal, expected part of growth. It helps students to see that not knowing isn't a flaw. It's just where they're right now in the learning journey. So we think that mindset shift reduces the fear of not being good enough. So together, all these five pillars works as a system to reduce imposter syndrome, not by pushing students to fix themselves, but by shifting the environment, expectations, and inner narrative that hold them back. So as we begin to wrap up, I'd like to invite you to take a moment of personal reflection. Let's revisit the imposter thoughts you shared earlier in the chat. Please take a moment to reflect how might you rephrase these thoughts using a lens of self-compassion. For example, instead of "I'm a fraud," you can try "this is new to me" or "I'm still learning." So instead of like "I do not belong," we can try "my experience is valued and valuable." So feel free to share your rephrased version in the chat. And this is our chance to shift from the self-doubt to self-compassion as we close today's session. And now I will take a look at the chat. So please take a moment to think about how to rephrase the post you just shared from the self-compassion approach. And you can post in the chat or you can unmute yourself and share. So while you are thinking, before we start to share, I just have the last slide to discuss. So I want to share a resource that might be helpful, especially for those of you who are interested in exploring more on the psychometric properties of CIPS. I want to be transparent. I do not see myself as an expert in scale validation. I have never conducted a validation study on the CIPS myself. So instead of trying to speak beyond my training, I want to show you a tool that helped me dig into the literature. It's called the Connected Papers. It's a web-based tool. It has some free version. You can type in some key articles like the original imposter syndrome article or any kind of validation study related to it, and then it will generate a visual graph of related work. You can explore some connected studies and find out which papers are frequently cited together and identify some validation studies or critiques. Now if you're ready, we can go back to this activity again. You can feel free to unmute yourself and share your posts. I will also stop sharing here.
Thank you, Dr. Yang. I see that we do have some comments. For example, Kimberly Fluent wrote, "I'm not there yet, but I can try other strategies to make progress. I don't need to compare myself to some arbitrary checkpoint. I just need to keep trying." Thanks for sharing that, Susan. And then Andrea picked up on the "I like to add yet" to negative statements. So like, "I don't know how to do this yet. I don't understand this yet." And Wendy wrote, "I'm here to learn and struggling is a sign of learning." Excellent. "I also don't know what other people know or not know, so I can't really compare." Thanks for sharing those.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna open this up now to our kind of Q&A portion. And I know we had originally some questions posted, but I want to make sure that we have a time to do that. And so feel free to use this time and either post it in chat, or if you really want to get your questions answered, feel free to raise your hand, and we'd love to kind of use this as a time to really converse with everyone. But so just to buy us some time, I'm gonna take a look at one of those questions that was sent in advance. One is, so you spoke about validation earlier, and when in your study you've seen it, you've used it for women, first gen, undergrad, and through doctoral students. And there's been aspects of this, it's been around for some time now, CIPS, and it's been validated for use. Are there any other particular populations that you've seen that might be worth noting for this group?
Yes, of course. I think actually to prepare for this presentation, I did talk to the Disability Resource Center at Purdue. I talked to the director, had a very thoughtful conversation, and she shared me with a lot of information that also I think fits into today's topic. So for students with disabilities, they also experience imposter syndrome, obviously, but for them, it can be even much stronger because some students, they always struggle with the thoughts like they get into college only because of their disability. And some students may say like, I only got an A in the test because of I have the test accommodations. So instead of like feeling proud, they always question if they really deserve to be there. That is that's especially true for students with non-visual disabilities. When they ask for help, some professors may say things like, you do not look like that. That that kind of makes students feel like they are lying to ask for favor, even though they're just asking for what they need. So for students, also for students who are first generation students or from low income families, it can be even harder for them to expose their disability identities. They may not feel comfortable to tell others about their disability. They might just avoid asking for accommodations, and that can stop them from doing their best and lead to stronger feelings of imposter syndrome. And also, campus often celebrates first generation students, but we do not see the same level of support or celebration for disability. And this silence can make students feel even more invisible. So based on my conversation with the director of our Disability Resource Center, she shared with me that what they usually do is to change the narratives with our students. They always tell students they got in through a real and fair college admission process, and they do have the ability to attend this university and they do belong here. And they keep emphasizing that accommodations are not unfair. They're just tools to help students show what they can actually do, what they can truly do. And the accommodations just level the playing field, not give anyone an advantage. So I think if there are possibilities, we can explore the imposter phenomenon among the students with disabilities on campus. But based on my practical experience, I know at this time it might be a little bit challenging to do to do some work that are related to students who are from marginalized populations because I cannot speak for other universities, but for the university I'm working now, I know some of the work related to students with disability has been paused for some unspoken reason because the university leadership are kind of concerned our traditional way to expose university and tell students story with some institutional data may put the university at a risk. So we there are a lot of uncertainties. So not only for working with students with disability, but for like theme for working with students with first generation or low income. Yeah. But I think it's worth to do it. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. You mentioned a couple of surprising things as a result of the research that you did in imposter syndrome, that 2024 paper. Are there any other surprises besides the first gen students?
Yeah, so that's a really important question and something I have thought a lot through both my research and practice. So besides the master approach goals, the positive effect of these goals we found in my study to reduce imposter syndrome. In my earlier qualitative work to examine the STEM talent development trajectory, I interviewed many high achieving women in STEM, many of whom were first generation or racially minoritized. They are graduate students at doctoral level. They shared some powerful stories about their experience, like they have been facing the chilly academic environment in STEM college. They experience isolation, imposter feelings, and they have been battling with the pressure to consistently prove themselves to their peers and their professors. But despite these challenges, they developed a strong scholar identity over time, and that really made a real difference. When they start to think like I belong here as a thinker, as a researcher, and as a contributor to knowledge. When students internalize this scholar identity, they are much less likely to fall into the trap of imposter syndrome. I always hear some students tell me that when they're presenting at some national conference, at first they were overwhelmed by the imposter thoughts, but after being asked some thoughtful questions about their research, they start to feel like a real researcher. They feel like they belonged not just in the room, but also in the field. And based on my experience with first generation students, I think what's especially powerful about this scholar identity is that for students who are navigating the gender bias, the racial stereotypes, and some economic marginalization, so focusing on their scholar identity can act as a kind of shield. When they see themselves as legitimate members of the academic community, they are less likely to internalize the negative stereotypes that others might project onto them. And it did help them separate who they are from what others assume about them. And I also saw that again in our FSY work at Yale. Since in 2024, as I mentioned before, we adopted a more asset-based approach, and we start to hear more comments from our students. They tell us that they feel like they can be full self there. They do not have to pretend to fit into this elite environment. They already feel belonged. So that ability to be with authentic self without performing or hiding did help students ease the pressure to be perfect self that can often lead to imposter thoughts. So I think for students from underrepresented backgrounds, developing a strong scholar identity really matters. That will help them not just gain confidence, but also reclaim their space in STEM because they are resisting the internalized doubts and they're learning to see themselves not as imposters, but as rightful contributors to the academic world. So I think the scholar identity also matters.
Yeah, that sounds like a really powerful way of addressing that imposter syndrome and expressions of that. I'm gonna ask folks to chime in here. One of the things that Dr. Yang put out is one of the slides was about like what some of the what Yale is doing and what Purdue is doing to kind of address, not necessarily directly imposter syndrome, but some aspects that do resonate with those who have these feelings that you have expressed in chat. So Do you all have any strategies institutionally or personally that you help with students? If you're addressing students, if you're one of the mentors, faculty mentors, feel free to share.
Yeah. Yeah, as I mentioned before, I really cherish this opportunity, this webinar uh, to co-create some strategies with our wonderful colleagues in the field.
Okay. So Marilyn asked a question. If we conduct annual assessments, how soon should we expect to see changes in imposter syndrome? So basically directly is if you say if you implement the CIPS scale, say at the beginning of the semester, when do we expect to see like, positive changes as a result? Or
Um,
can we do a pre-post basically?
yeah, I think definitely we can do a pre-post for any kinds of interventions, and because for the SIP survey, there is a time frame. It's like in the past 12 months, have you ever had blah blah feelings? I think if there is a specific timeline for your interventions, you can change this statement a little bit when you are using the SIP survey. Regarding how soon should we expect to see changes in imposter syndrome, I think it also depends on the timing because there are some specific times because we know that imposter feelings evolve over time. So right now, for most current tools like the SIPS, can just give us a snapshot what a student is feeling right now or in past few months. But imposter syndrome can shift across some key moments, like when students declare a major, apply for some internships, or speak in a lab meeting, or prepare for graduate school. At that time, at that moment, their imposter syndrome may be very intense, but gradually it will disappear a little bit and then it will become intense again when another important timing is coming. So I think it really depends on what kind of interventions you are doing. Yeah. I hope I have already answered your question. If I do not, if any audience have any suggestions or experience, just feel free to unmute yourself and share. Yeah.
Okay. Um, okay. Let's see here. Amy wrote, emphasizing curiosity and creativity in hypothesis and development and problem solving are as necessary characteristic for science can be helpful ways to support students at all levels to take pride in themselves and see themselves as scientists. Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah, I just want to add a little bit comment to this one about emphasizing curiosity and creativity, because because I'm a big fan of AI. Because I so in this summer I taught quantitative courses for graduate students, and I encourage students to use AI tools like ChatGPT in their work. But I also ask them to clearly explain how they use it in their work. And what I noticed was surprising. Students scored much higher than previous years, and they're much quieter in the classroom and didn't come to office with questions. So I could easily tell many of them have used AI in their final project, but none of them said how. Even though I made it clear that using AI wouldn't hurt their grades. So this made me wonder, did they really understand the concepts, or did AI make them feel like they understood when they actually didn't? And it also made me to reflect what is the teacher's role in the age of AI. It seems like there is a paradox. On the one hand, students need teachers less because with ChatGPT, like they can get quick answers and help with writing or solving problem. But on the other hand, students need teachers more than ever. They need teachers to guide them and mentor them to do some hard things that would be good for the future. And they need teachers to model them curiosity, creativity, integrity, and also persistence. And all this cannot be taught by any kinds of large language models today. So I do like the point of emphasizing curiosity and creativity because this is super important at the age of AI.
Okay. Before we go, because it's 3:55, I really want to open it up for Jennifer Billman. So Jennifer, go ahead and open and unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you. I just started typing this and thought it might be easier if I just speak it. So thank you so much, one for your presentation. I've been thinking a lot about students' self-assessment of their own preparation and preparedness, in essence, with imposter syndrome impacting their self-assessment. So the scenario I'm thinking of would be where a group of students might be exposed to programmatic elements where maybe they learn about growth mindset or maybe lots of things that you talked about. They become more self-aware and begin to reframe their perceptions of themselves. But is there a chance where, say, students who might have in addition to imposter syndrome, like perfectionism tendencies, is there any scenario where like students actually may rate themselves more harshly so that when you're comparing students exposed to programmatic elements, they might actually be self-assessing more harshly than students who are not exposed to programmatic elements, who might not be as like aware maybe of their own growth potential. Does that make sense? Like once you start thinking like, oh, well, I haven't learned this yet, that could translate then and spiral back around to I have so much to learn, so I'm going to rate myself lower on the accomplishment or preparedness scale. So I'm just trying to piece these pieces together in my brain, like how the imposter syndrome scale and preparedness assessments might be able to come together to yield more accurate uh, views of what students are actually grappling with internally.
Okay. Thank you so much for your questions. Uh, I, to be honest, I do not have anything on top of my mind. Because I need some time to process information. If you're interested, we can follow up. And if any audience like the mentor, if you want have anything to share related to Jennifer's question, just feel free to share.
Wow. It's a good point. It's a good point, and
Mhm.
probably unfortunately we don't have enough time to cover it, but this is probably a great segue to our kind of wrap up. So Jamila, if you can put up the next slide. Um, so just want to let you know that so besides going directly to Dr. Yang, we also have an opportunity for to be here for your assistance. And here's a kind of a QR code and even a link for our technical assistance request form. So if there's any follow-up questions that you might have that you didn't get answered, you just thought of it as soon as you kind of clicked away from this later on. Feel free to take a look at this form, put it out, and we can forward your questions to Dr. Yang or to anybody else in our previous presentation. So all our webinars on the evidence-based practices are available online and all the slides. So if you find yourself having questions based upon those presentations, let us know. We can through this, and we can forward that or answer them directly. Next slide, please. Now, I hope you enjoyed this presentation by Dr. Yang and some of the exchanges we've been having. We'd love to have your feedback on this. So if you could take a moment, complete the survey. You have here the QR code and the link. It'll also pop up as a separate window when you exit. So we really, really find your opinions and comments important because, in fact, this series of evidence-based practice came about through your or your peers' comments. So it's really helpful to hear from you how we can be more helpful. Next slide, please. And so we really thank you all for coming and participating. A big thank you again to Dr. Yang for sharing her research and her experiences working directly with students and working also as an evaluator and also a data guru in this whole field, not just imposter syndrome, but really to help students be their grow and be experts in their fields. We want to thank you again for attending this and for all the great questions and comments and reflections. And we'd love for you to stay connected with us. You'll see that we are, and Jamil can pop this into the chat. You can reach us by email. Feel free to check out our website. We are available through LinkedIn, and we have just launched a new Blue Sky account. And so you can reach us there as well. So thank you. And we'll keep it on for a few more minutes. If you have any, want to put it in the chat or some links. And yes, we will have the slide deck available. In fact, it's available right now. So you can check that out. And then we will post the recorded presentation as soon as we do a little bit of cleanup and so on. But the recording will also be available. Yes, thank you. Thank you for coming.